Saying yes. Yes, and I'm cheap too. I'm not expensive like a tax preparer. Yeah, they were expensive. So yes, the Byzantine, that terminology, you may know that term referring to what do they say, administrative red tape and all the rest of it. And also, of course, about when we think of the history and the ideas that come with Byzantine. Of course, we all know Byzantium and the idea of the Eastern Roman Empire. So, in fact, when you talk about those particular terms, you realize you're talking about something that we use, but they didn't use, which is interesting to think about, isn't it? That, in fact, much of this has to do with the present taking on the past and then developing it as it would be for a long time indeed. And here it is. I love this map. It's, of course, simplified so that you can appreciate what was, quote unquote, originally East Roman, but that you can see it had periods of growth, but it was always either growing or lessening. And by the latter centuries, it would be reduced to what we would call now Turkey, Asia Minor. So we're looking, and forget the two different shades of green. Just think of East and West and recall what the areas are. And there, of course, is modern day Istanbul with the red dot. Some of you in better times may well have gone there. I was noticing that the airport was named after the father of modern Turkey, and must have come all Ataturk. And all of that is to say that our friends in the Byzantine Empire, Eastern Roman Empire, wouldn't have known much about the Turks because they weren't around. We always remember that when we get to these particular areas. This was the Eastern Roman Empire, courtesy Alexander the Great and his Greeks / Macedonians. Remember, they conquered all those territories, and then the Romans took them. And then, of course, as time went on, they split up. Remember how Constantine created Constantinople, or the New Rome, just to make that as simple as possible. And we see, of course, the areas that will be reconquered, but it is, to use this wonderful word, ephemeral. Here today, gone tomorrow. And it's very expensive. But you can't stop them. They say this really belongs to us, so we need to take it back. And so they do. And imagine they had rather significant casualties and expenses, and they did. And of course, they had a variety of other problems. But all of this is important to us because the Byzantines, Eastern Roman Empire, will be an influence on what had been the Western Roman Empire, but dare I now call it the emerging medieval world. The Eastern Roman Empire, as we're going to see, has a variety of influences. because, for one, there are not a lot of people learning Greek in the West. And we just don't realize how significant that is going to be. Alpha, beta, gamma, we learn all that when we're younger. And we understand, of course, these are the languages of the educated. And I want to emphasize that, the Latin that some of us took in school, or, as I always say to my students, for those who want to be members of the clergy, they will take Greek, which is, I suppose, a relatively small number, because learning Greek will make organic chemistry seem like it's like it can be tough to say. So you may say, I don't think the Lord is calling me to be a clergyman after all. I'll just learn my Latin and move on. But Greek is tough, but that's, of course, the major language of administration of the church. And we bear that in mind because we're going to have lots and lots of what's called vernacular languages, regular folks. So during our early period, everybody's into Latin. You say, even over there? Shoot, yeah, because Roman, we want to be part of the Romans. So how will that change? Well, they probably know Greek also, but you got to know Latin to get in on the entrance exams, if you want to go into administration, public administration, that kind of thing. They're going to say, you got to have your Latin and your Greek. True classical education. You Gibbon lovers, you will understand. He very much, when you got at the classics, my grandparents, that they always told me about that, was just part of the regime in that day. So notice these forms. Constantinople, and we can actually see the ruins of the ancient city, which I think is interesting to know about where it was. I don't plan to go to Turkey anytime soon, but it is true that had been the site of this ancient Roman city. And when Constantine decided, this would be a great place for a second Rome. And he may have, worked with his architects and engineers, but I'm sure they had no problem in working out, doing what the master wanted. It was Hellenistic, based on that Greek heritage, regardless of whatever areas that might have been. And, the site of the Trojan War and other examples of what went on in that part of the world, which we would call, I guess, extreme Western Turkey now. And I don't even need to mention the Greek and Turkish unpleasantness that has gone on for a long time. That's not part of our problem. But the area of the East is definitely lots more folks, people, and lots more cities. What happened to the Roman cities in the West? Well, I'll tell you, they never had that many anyway. And thanks to those lovely Goths and other people, they got smaller. Because why did they get smaller? Because people in cities have to have something to do. So if you're an agriculture type person, there's always something for you to do. You're not looking for my business failed. Well, it's there. It's the soil. And I didn't get this from Comer Hall. I'm telling you, it's the truth. There's always something to do in the world of farming. because they would talk about, if it rains, you can work inside. I mean, it's like so many opportunities for service, so to speak, It's like, yeah, just kick back and what is it they say? Chill. I don't think in farming you ever get to chill. So the idea is, but what if you're upper class? Well, you got wars and you've got to breed. That takes time. And so basically, all of this means the West doesn't have much urban areas. I mean, London exists. I mean, Anglo-Saxon, Roman London. There's even a museum which you can see it and enjoy that. And the future Paris, not the Paris we know, but there is a Paris. But all of that is to say, not like it will be. The cities, though, like Alexandria, as in Alexander the Great, Egypt, probably one of the largest cities in the empire. And Antioch, which of course we know from scripture, plus Jerusalem. All of these were among the most populous cities of the empire. As far as Constantinople itself, it was created obviously in the 4th century under Constantine. And we're thinking during that time, it started getting bigger and bigger. And why? Well, it's the center of the Eastern Roman Empire. It's like Washington, D.C. or any other great administrative city. People flock there, jobs, possibilities. So all of this is to say, and these are only the big three in terms of the Eastern Roman Empire. There's very little to compare with that in the West. You can think of Milan or Rome, and they're nice, I'm not saying. But in terms of size and really the significance in this early stage, these are more significant. If you were trying to tell your children, where you might think about going, you might think about Huntsville, the great city, or Nashville or Atlanta, wherever. But here they are, and they're, of course, all in the East. Now, here is one I really love because the Council of Nicaea. Many of you will know about the Council of Nicaea because you know about that Nicene Creed. And you think, why do we have a Nicene Creed? Well, obviously, this is not Sunday school, but I can say that the creed is to set up an understanding of specifics in church doctrine. And who is the special guest? Well, you understand. It's got to be the emperor, Constantine. He's taking off a day of fighting, and hanging out with the theologians. And I keep thinking, what's a guy like that going to do? Because, forgive me, but don't you think a lot of this is all Greek to him? It's like they're talking about all this, creeds and God and all that. And yeah, that's interesting. Thinking about when is our first break, or when, I really like this. People might even go to sleep. I hate to say that, but it happens. We fight it, don't we? But nap time comes when we so we'll understand. They didn't have coffee back then. Yeah, it was a very hard time for people who were fighting. But yeah, could you imagine hour after hour? But this is what Constantine wanted. That Edict of Milan, he wanted to, get with those Christians. So that's the price we pay. Sometimes they use that term, don't ever call anybody this, Caesaro-papistic. You say you're so Caesaro-papistic. And they might think, oh, shucks, I'm not. You shouldn't call me that. But before they get too excited about, I'm just trying to do what's right, understand you're calling them a kind of Constantine figure. Because in the East, not so much in the West, but in the East particularly, they view it in a way, some people say Persian style. I don't know if I agree, but sort of like, no, you can't be God, but you're darn close. You and God are tight, capital T. Yeah. And well, what about leaders of the church or government? Well, they're nice. Silver, bronze, but not gold. God and I are gold. Top. You get that idea? I mean, it's amazing. So that's why he's there. And so you say, but those bishops, and there's a little stenographer. Wouldn't you hate to have that, John? They didn't have Greg shorthand back then. So you remember Greg shorthand. That takes us back. But yeah, could you imagine? Yeah, down there, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, just writing away. And yeah, you would really want some breaks. But anyway, all these folks are just arguing about the Trinity and whatnot. And Constantine's going like, you know, this is really interesting, but you kind of get the purpose that we want this to end. And then, because, you know, it's like a faculty meeting. It's like folks just want to hear themselves. And so finally, somebody's going to speak about the magic word, adjournment. Yes, so I think probably Constantine said, you know, I've got to go fight against heathen because they're all around and I need to beat up on some of them. So y'all finish up your business. And they say, before you leave, could we just tell you one thing? We love you. May we kiss your cheeks? Yeah, I mean, yeah. There is a lot of that going on, I promise. And that's part of being Caesaro-papistic because you're both head of the state and church, which is an odd position to be in because, of course, we have bishops, archbishops, all kinds of highfalutin folks, but they all have to acknowledge him. And that's an extraordinary business, but it seems more an Eastern thing than a Western thing. So I just note that, and the Council of Nicaea will be very important. And by the way, Nicaea, which is, of course, now Turkish, was a major city in the East. I believe it's south of Constantinople, but it's much older than Constantinople. So it was residence for Diocletian before Constantine. So they lived there. And I mean, I'm sure they had great facilities, you know, like we want to have these big meetings. So very, very important before and after Constantinople, Nicaea. So if you ever get to go to Turkey, this may be a place you want to see. You see some sites of various kinds of structures. I mean, it's not like you can see here they debated the Trinity. I don't think that, but I mean, it's still very interesting. I don't know what the Turks have there now, but it's definitely very beautiful part of Turkey. The church somehow, I guess because of the meaning of the word Orthodox, came to be known. You know, it's like you think just Christians from the East and Christians from the West and said, okay, you can be Orthodox and we'll be Catholic. And so, you know, no one has ever explained that to me satisfactorily. And I've tried, believe me, I've tried to know why those names Catholic meaning universal, And Orthodox meaning you are basically in tune with the correct beliefs, as opposed to others who are deviants, like Arians. Yeah. I mean, Arians, they mean well, but they're on the wrong track. So they're not Orthodox. You say, well, then can't we just have one name? Can't we just all be Christians? Well, you Orthodox are a little off. Yeah, you've got problems. RateMyChurch.com. And you people, yeah, you're just not on the right side. They still fuss. I hate to say it. I mean, they shake hands. You've seen them on TV, yeah. I mean, it's like, how you doing? Good to see you. How's everything out back east? Yeah. Glad y'all stopped by. But that is not considered significant until later on. But we know that the Eastern Church will develop with a, shall we say, Greek orientation. Their clergy and variations will evolve from one part to the other, as we're going to see, even though they're Christian. They're both Christian, Catholic in the West, Orthodox in the East. If you were Orthodox and somebody said, oh, have you heard what's going on in Rome? Oh, you mean Cowtown, Nowheresville? I mean, you say, well, that's hurtful to this great Rome, the Seven Hills. Well, I don't need to tell you, for those of you who've been to Italy, about the Chamber of Commerce there. I mean, they put on the big show. Not if you were over in the East. If you're in Alexandria and you say, losers, they're rustic, bucolic. How many words can I use like that? Yeah, they are just, I just haven't got it. Yes. They're not with it. They are not hip. All of this, and there's reason we understand why they think that. I mean, we all love the Germanic people, all those Goths and all those folks. But let's face it, that's not like hanging out with the Hellenistic people. Because you ask some of these Gothic people, do you know about Alpha and Omega? And they'll look at you like, not so much. 9. You know, they're really not going to know much. Of course, 476 has a special ring to some of you. When you think of 476, really, you'll never forget it. It's etched in your mind. It's forever with you. And you think, Romulus Augustulus, I was a teenage emperor, yes. His father was a German chieftain who happened to have control of Rome at that moment. And he was emperor for a few months. It's an interesting story, not especially significant, but that would just show you how far down Rome had gone. He'll be replaced. I mean, 18's a little early to go on, get a pension, don't you think? Golden parachute, but the Rome, as we think of it being, and Romulus Augustulus, is not really so significant in terms of the Roman Empire in the West, because so much is to come. When we think of 476, we make a big deal of that and the last Roman emperor and all of that. But the truth is, it's sort of like that old song, The Old Gray Mare, She Ain't What She Used to Be. I mean, it'd been going downhill in Rome for a long time. So it's not like, I mean, we know 476 and we care deeply. But we understand that they knew it was coming. There was a reason for Constantinople, because Rome had already become relatively insignificant. Of course, you remember last time we were talking about the invasions of the Visigothic peoples and how some Romans, church fathers were talking about the end of the world and all of that. There is all that kind of talk, but we know that Rome had been going downhill quite a long time. Not just the city, but the empire in the West. So this is not new. So now there's no empire in the West. Romulus Augustus took early retirement. And so he can now spend out his 20s and 30s, however long he had, in comfortable retirement under his father, who was just basically another German chieftain. So how is this going to be significant? Well, it's going to be significant in the sense that there's only one headquarters, Constantinople. We call it the New Rome. I mean, we want to keep that idea of Rome, but we understand East versus West, and the Greek element will grow and continue to grow as time goes on. Now, Justinian, I have 2 more dates, and this is optional. If you don't want to learn this, you'll get extra credit. But if you choose not to accept, like Mission Impossible, if you choose not to accept, I will not penalize you. Okay, so that's the way I am. I try to be charitable. 527 to 565. So very impressive. And that, of course, is the last emperor who is part of a Latin regime. After Justinian, and this, I could make this a multiple choice question, or maybe on a quiz show. Who made it possible that you didn't have to take Latin in preparation for an administrative position? You would know it was Justinian, and you would say, wow, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. What am I going to win? My praise, my partiality and bias. But that idea is that basically everybody's going Greek. And so he was the last one, and I think it's waning then. And you say, why? Well, I mean, what would they say? Sort of like Latin is so 5th century, and now, we're so, what do you think about Plato? Well, I can't really read the original because I didn't have any Greek. That was an elective where I went to school. It's like, but, it's like now in Constantinople and amongst the people who were emperors and in those entourages, sort of everybody's had Greek. Again, those of you might have thought about the seminary, may well think about scripture and so forth. I don't think you'll have to do all of Plato's works. At least I would hope not. But I think you'd be expected to do all the Gospels and epistles in the original. So that's something to think about in terms of getting ready for your scholarship application for seminary. How much do you know? But they did use Latin. He was from Southeastern Europe. And like many Byzantine emperors, I'll tell you the truth, he was not from what you would say the aristocracy. Justinian's uncle had been a military leader, and like all the rest of the civilizations I know about, nepotism is alive and well. And since his uncle didn't have sons, as far as I know, he sort of adopted Justinian as his protege, and he's out fighting. And he's fighting forever Persians because they just won't go away. They're over in the east. You know, you thought Alexander the Great got rid of them, right, when they were defeated, but they're back. And so that's a nuisance. Either they come into our land or we go into theirs. And then those darn Slavs, yes. You say, ooh, why are they bothering us? Well, they're a special surprise. You know, the Germans came to the west, but those darn Slavs, they just kept coming south, and they've been trouble ever since. And you say, but don't they want to be part of our world and take Greek classes and things? Not that I know of, but they are very, very costly and annoying bunch. And there is no doubt that his uncle and he, Justinian, would be very involved with this. But it's made interesting, of course, because of the fact of his wife, who is one of the most incredible people you can read about in Byzantine, indeed, in all of Roman history. Because as far as we can determine, and that's all you can do, she enjoyed more power than virtually any other, including Eleanor of Aquitaine, or when you think of all the people who enjoyed power, we definitely think about this as being a sort of joint rule. I'm not so sure what his uncle thought about her, because she came to her position with a certain amount of controversy. I'm saying it as nice as I can, Jimmy. Whether or not this is true, I mean, this is something out of, there was this old magazine called Confidential. And I hate all this kind of sleazy stuff, but maybe, I don't know how much she brought it upon herself or not. She really enjoyed having power. Let's put it that way. So she wasn't going out, oh, I just want to be most popular empress and Miss Congeniality and that sort of thing. I think tough cookie would go best, and perhaps that will make it more difficult. But she definitely had power over Justinian. And when he became ruler, and the way she became his wife was even controversial, because they may have met as a result of a card game. Yeah. And she was involved in, shall we say, her father had been a bear trainer, so she knew the life of the carnival. I told you this was something out of some sort of, I don't know. Would it be rated M or rated G? I'm thinking adults only, because this was not something, and I don't think I would not go up to, Your Majesty, we are doing a feature on you in the Constantinople Gazette, And we wanted, could you tell us about your teen years and how you came to power? I think that was just a closed chapter. Okay, I'm here. So you better shut up, loser, because you like your head where it is. That's really important. You know, when they talk about hazardous to your health, yes, I think bringing up her past. But then comes, of course, Procopius. Procopius was a historian, a Byzantine historian and writer, very important in Justinian's court. You know, it's sort of like, remember those old articles, as told to so-and-so? Well, I think that was Procopius. He is writing about that life, and he was a member of the court, very close to figures, Byzantine figures. Yeah, I know, you read it. I mean, yeah. So she was on the stage. I'm sure she got to do dramatic performances regularly. Yeah, definite thespian there. But again, it's like she had a career, carnival, you know, and doing dances. And what was that bear called? Smokey? Yeah. I mean, maybe, you know, somebody knows and they could dance or all of that. And courtesan, and I know, and such as the Greeks used to call a common one, it's not even nice. It was like, you know, like a real high class courtesan, doesn't even say that. And you say, how do you get away with this? Well, the answer is you don't. You write all of this probably at night, and because you're feeling like, God, I get so tired of those people, especially that old bossy empress. So this is Procopius at home, right? So he's writing all this, and what does he do with it? Sticks it in some secretive place like they do in those murder mysteries. Yeah, so nobody will find it. I think I saw that on Agatha Christie. So it's like, yeah, because if they catch that, oh, and the Byzantine government had authority. Don't you worry about that. Searching all that. Could you imagine Procopius? He could have been hurt. I don't care how much life insurance he had. He would have been in trouble. He wouldn't have just gotten expelled from the Byzantine History Club either. I think if they had written, you know, about that, courtesan, yeah. So for that, she was not a flute or harp player, but she was trained to dance. But only gave her youth to anyone she met. And I'm thinking, that Procopius, he had bad days, don't you think? And I mean, when you write things like that, you're probably not. Yeah. I mean, it's like, and then her general favorites include actors. She plays in comedy because she was funny. This is not portrayal that he will talk about in the official history by Procopius. Believe me. And if you look at the official history by Procopius, it will give you a very different impression. Is Theodora a devout person? Yes. Does she like to go to church? Does she like to give to poor people? All the time. Is she busy helping Justinian constantly? Where does this come from? Courtesan Manus? It's not in that version. We're talking, yeah, it's a fascinating. And when they discovered it conveniently after he was dead, it was too late. You want to do something to me? Too bad. I'm gone. I'm out of here, man. Yeah. But that's the truth, though. But obviously, whether or not this is true or whether or not it paints, you know, maybe it's like anything else, partially true, partially not. I'm sure she was resented greatly. She died of cancer in 548. And we can tell a difference in Justinian's character. He was much older, 15 years older. But he lived on, never remarried. We know nothing of any other wife or companion. So her power was amazing. And we see this particularly, I think, interesting portrayal of her in these kinds of frescoes, and see her with the officials. And I'm sure it was with her approval, as we will see. I mean, you wouldn't have done this had she not wanted it. But that's in the 6th century now. And she and her husband are very busy with urban renewal of Constantinople, because, as someone was mentioning before class, the city had deteriorated over all this time since Constantine, and they had groups of, shall we say, troublemakers. And basically, this was something that both Justinian and Theodora were interested in. How they paid for it, I guess, like a lot of other people, they just put it on the credit card. Say somebody can pay for it later. I mean, there are people like that. Not us, but I'm just saying that there are people of that sort. And so, in addition to that, there are other expenses, and I'll talk about that because this is one of them. And ignore, if you will, the minarets, because obviously they don't fit into Justinian's scene. But that is a beautiful sight in the Black Sea, and this and that and the other. It's a beautiful sight, and you don't even have to like James Bond movies to appreciate this. But this is probably, that could well come from one of the movies, couldn't it? Yeah, that particular scene. But the idea there is that he wanted to build, I guess you'd say, something even greater than they had in Rome. So is this about religion? Well, it's kind of. It's about the accoutrements of religion, you can call it that. I'm going to have the biggest and the best church. And many of you probably have toured this. So you are aware of how incredible it is. I mean, when I think of this, I'm thinking about St. Patrick's in New York, or St. John the Divine, also in New York. All of these great churches, but this is one of the best. It has been Muslim since the 15th century, so you will understand that since that time, much of the Christian ornamentation was covered over, and it became a mosque, I guess, until the 20th century. But I understand they have begun again to have Islamic services in the last couple of decades. If you know differently, I would love to hear, but my understanding is that it is a museum, but at times it's turned over to Turkish Muslim worshipers. Whatever, it's still definitely worth seeing on a trip to Istanbul if you have that opportunity, or maybe you already have. And you think, gosh, I bet that was expensive. Well, yes, I'm thinking so, but I'm also thinking that Justinian and Theodora probably had a very strong idea about, get ready, Caesaropapism. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're not saying like, oh, shucks, we'd just be happy with a little chapel. And, we want the biggest and the grandest. And just charge it, just put it on credit. And if I'd been his architect, I don't know, I'd be asking for cash up front because he was spending fairly profusely. So that is how it gets to be a holy wisdom, as it's known. And Islam makes sense that I've got another date for you, but you'll thank me later. 1453. Yeah, you'll want to know it. You say, but I already know 1492. I know you do, and I'm happy for you. But this is my class, and 1453 is special to me. The fall of Constantinople to the Turks. So please don't forget that. Okay, could be on the test. So, general restoration and the corpus juris civilis. And I'll never forget, I had a student in law school who came back to see me. He said, oh, we had to learn about that. And I said, oh, I'm so glad, because it's sort of like at least one thing you taught us has to do with reality, like because the body of civil law is the first major Roman law code, which is pretty significant when you think about it. And of course, Justinian gets all the credit, which I would resent if I'd been one of those law professors who must have worked on all of that. But Justinian's always said that I did all this. I mean, I guess what you say today now, he funded all of that. There was some sort of legal fund that went to pay for all this. Because you know how far they went back? I thought you'd never ask. 753 BC. Another one to remember. Yeah. All the way back to the beginning of Rome. Yeah, I know. So much. I know your head is swirling with all those dates, but you're going to get it. But that 753, and it's like, could you imagine pulling all that together? I mean, you say, did they have a computer and they could just, no, nothing. I couldn't even think when I was, in graduate school and have all my note cards spread out on the card table. I mean, it was hard back in the olden times, I'm telling you. And all of that law, and then it has to be pulled together. And imagine all those folks, all those really brilliant people, and all that fussing. I mean, it's like a punishing faculty meeting, hour after hour, and you just can't. Well, I think it means this. No, it means that. And so that is very, very important. The body of civil law. And that will be the first major Roman law upon which we all remember Stanley Kowalski, the Napoleonic Code. Remember? Tennessee Williams fans? Yes. Remember that when they talk about gotta find out what my rights are, Napoleonic Code. But that comes from the Roman law code under Justinian. And then what do we do about heretics? It seems like only yesterday we had issues of Arianism. Yeah. And we got a vaccine. Arians got right. I don't know why I went Arian, but I've decided to renounce Arianism. I want to be with you people. Yes. But now here come Monophysites. And I know they got a bad problem too. And it's hard to understand Monophysites, but I'm going to make this really simple. The Monophysites denied the church's claim that Christ had fully a divine nature and a human nature. In other words, to be Christ as the church taught him, he had to be fully human and fully divine. Why? Because, according to the church, he would not have suffered on earth had he not been. But I was about to say a D word, bad word. Monophysites denied that. They said he merely appeared to have a human nature. It was really a totally divine nature. And you say, the important thing is we just all love each other. No, they didn't say that. Wake up, Walt Disney people. These are rich. This is I say, those are fighting words. Yeah. Oh boy, and they had it out. Especially, and can you believe it? Egypt and Syria. We don't have any Muslims there. So we gotta have these monophysites. And I don't know, and I guess we'll never know really why this was so popular in Egypt and Syria, except I guess it just caught on, just like any kind of fad. And I'm never sure, if you running around Damascus and you run to people and say, what do you think about those monophysites? I love those two natures. What do you think? Oh, I'm a one nature myself. But I'm thinking, I really, really doubt that. I'm just thinking people catch on and say, and they running down Orthodox. Yeah, and this hurts. This could be my violence, yes. But then where it gets to Constantinople, Justinian says, I'm not mad, I'm just hurt because I'm kind of Caesaro-papistic. And the idea that you would believe something that's not orthodox, that really hurts my feelings. And when my feelings are hurt, you need to be hurt. So that's part of intolerance, isn't it? It's never the idea of let's just all get along. So it will become a major issue and very, very important for the future. Now, are the monophysites the only dissenting group? No, but they will do as a perfect example. And I think it's interesting because it may well have been that Theodora was sympathetic to them. And again, you often wonder, are these people really concerned about the theological niceties here, or does this have to do as much with power and control as it does about theology? Who knows? But those monophysites could be very, very troubling indeed. And maybe because she was dead, or maybe because he just couldn't help himself. Oh, he would have dreams. Procopius would talk about he would have dreams. It's like, you need to move on. We don't have the West anymore. It was nice. But that was then. And this is now. Let's just focus on the East. No, I want it all. And, it's like a lot of rulers. The generals would say, sir, may you live 1,000 lives. You were so wonderful. We want to kiss both cheeks and we wish there were more. But we need to tell you, this is going to be a very, very difficult matter. Are you saying it can't be done? Don't you believe in Caesaro-papism? It's like, you want to keep being a general? Would you like to have a head? Would you like to breathe every day? Yeah, it's like, it's very naughty to disagree. So the fact is that they had to accept it, And at first it seemed real good. God, how often have we heard that about wars? You know, that first week or two. Yeah, it's great. Go war. Particularly when you go down here in Northern Africa, and guess where we are? Aryan land. And who are the Aryans? Vandals. And how do the Roman subjects of the Vandals, do they say, we heart Vandals? No, we don't like them. We don't go to church with them either. And they are ugly to us. Vandals, bad news. So the Byzantine army is coming in. We send love from Constantinople. We want to be your friend. And it must be that they got a very wrong impression about the opportunities ahead when they took over Northern Africa, these Byzantines. As you can see, they took over a bit of southern Spain from Visigoths, who will eventually, of course, convert to Catholic Christianity. But then we're really going in for trouble. The so-called Gothic wars between the Byzantines and the Ostrogoths. And this will consume most of the resources of the Byzantines before they take it. I mean, but this was a do or die for Justinian. And it was very expensive and very difficult. Oh, and in the accounts, they make it sound like it was worse than Hannibal and the Second Punic War in terms of what it did to Italy. And you would think, well, maybe peace in our time. I just don't think they thought that way. It was going to be taken. And the Ostrogoths, you remember Theodoric the Ostrogoth, who had been the king? This was after his time. And so somehow, I guess, they thought, that is Justinian and his entourage, they would be welcomed as some sort of wonderful people. Thank you for getting rid of the Ostrogoths. Well, it didn't turn out that way. And the result was decades of fighting. And that leads me straight to the establishment of Byzantine authority in one of the great places that I went to and always wanted to go back to, the city of Ravenna, which is south of Venice, and very, very beautiful. And you say, well, why do we have to have Ravenna? Why can't we go to Rome? Well, somebody's already living there. And I don't know if he really wants to rent out a suite to us. So, shucks, we'll just stay over in Ravenna. Because when we think about that part of Italy, you are thinking about going east, aren't you? Like Venice and all of that area. So, that's there, and there will be an official called an exarch. He'll run the Byzantine government. I imagine they've got a lot of issues to deal with because of the fact they are running the Byzantine government. Because don't you think, it's a lot of goodwill efforts need to be made because a lot of people need some support, since most of Italy is ravaged by the elimination of Ostrogothic rule. So it's going to be established in Ravenna, up in the northeast of Italy. Let's see if I can do. Yeah. This is the San Vitale Basilica. It is a Catholic church. not Orthodox, but I think the mosaics and the architecture and all of it, you think you're in the East, I can tell you that. It doesn't look like anything in the West, really. It's absolutely amazing to me. And of course, we're going to have angels and we're going to have rulers, because the rulers are going to be Greek rulers. It's amazing that thing stood, because the Byzantines aren't going to have it forever. They're only going to have it until the 8th century. So, but Ravenna, this particular church, San Vitale there in Ravenna, remains, I understand, from the tour literature I read, one of the greatest examples of Byzantine art and architecture anywhere. And it is conveniently located. It sounds like I'm pushing it on the tour, but it's like, in terms of not going to Turkey and getting to see this great example of what the Byzantines did. And I don't know how I got paid for, but I guess somehow, some way it was. And this will give you an even closer realization. You got obviously the ruler and surrounded by entourage of two kinds of support: godly support and then human support. But of course, all of this is in praise of the emperor, Justinian. And there is that section about Theodora as well. So this pertains to both of them in terms of these mosaics. But can you imagine the kind of work that went into that and how well it's been preserved? So that's Ravenna, East Italy, and that may be in the book. I don't know. I mean, it is one of the great sites, that's for sure. I mean, Venice is nice too, and I'm not knocking it. I just remember so well thinking about the Byzantine civilization because of having to be in Italy at the time. Yep, there she is. And again, we just overlook the secret history and don't think about dancing or bear training. Yeah, the carnival life. We just think about, wow, I bet those artists knew where. I mean, it's like Olin Wood Mills, the photographer. You think he's going to make you have ugly children? Of course not. Everybody's going to be great looking. That's what we pay them for. But that's, of course, what he's doing here. And there she is. Do you think I look good? Oh, Your Majesty, you're fabulous. I have never seen an empress look any better. Yeah. You think a sycophant might be involved? I would think so. Yes. So, yeah, that is there. That's the one I'll never forget. And again, the various advisors, both ecclesiastical and lay. I think those are women actually next to the empress. So, after Justinian comes a ruler called Heraclius, and this is one of those great might have been rulers. He just happened to come about the time, because I'm going to remind you of something. As you know, Justinian died in 565. And you think, why? Why does that year? stand out so much to me. You've got it. It was the birth of Muhammad. Good for you. Yeah. I mean, when you have a mind like that, it's a shock for all of us and an inspiration as well. So there, yeah, I know. When you've got it, you just got it. But that's the idea that Heraclius, he too had been a great warrior. He had gotten the power, and he said, as your emperor, I'm going to beat up Persians there. And he did. It's one of those great victories. It just happened, of course, that the Muslim religion is about to make a major appearance. And when it does, of course, in the life of Muhammad and afterwards, it will, in fact, decimate much of what had been the Byzantine Empire. So it will make its own empire, we could say. But that's always to say, does that mean Heraclius was not a successful emperor? Well, he was successful in what he did. I mean, he beat up on Persians really well. And that's what we needed him to do. That was on the to-do list. So, yes. And he kept much of what he had held, or what had been held, under Justinian. Although, and I know that the effort to maintain all of those lands in the West, that was a losing cause. Easy for me to say now, but we understand that in terms of maintaining Roman authority, it's gone. We need to let it go and just move on. And they just couldn't do it because we want it. It's really ours. Can we get anything more? No. You're lucky you got what you did, and that's just kind of on loan. And you can't keep it. So as far as Heraclius, you got all these different projects. So you're thinking, what else can we do? Well, basically, you can just accept reality, and that's what they're going to have to do. Meanwhile, even when we get those monopsites quiet, God, here come those iconoclasts. Trouble. Now, what's not to like about an icon? Love those icons. Beautiful. I don't know if that's you get me one. Yeah, they're very nice. But some people began to think, rightly or wrongly, that people who may not have been theologically educated might have confused the reality with the icon. In other words, thought the icon itself had the power. So instead of saying the icon represents the holiness, they saw the artistic representation as doing so. They would talk, there's stories, medieval stories about how people would steal icons and think, now I got the power. It's like, now you have to get a ransom to get the icon back. Yeah. Because I got the power. And you say, really? Yes, really. Now, who are our icon people? Oh, this is a vocabulary builder. Try this out over the weekend. Iconodules.
Nike. They're big on icon, right?
Yes, I had not thought about that. Yes. Now that brings me that. Yes, Nike. Yeah, that's interesting. Yes. So the iconodule, if you meet any iconodules, you say, you're nice people, you're good people. Iconodules love icons, but they use them the right way. They don't. But the iconoclasts want to beat up on icons. They hurt icons. So you say, so what happens? Well, the poor Byzantine government decides to get involved. This is a good time to keep your mouth shut, but they didn't. So they say, you know what? We've gotten on an anti-icon policy. I know. It's like, couldn't we just all get along? And this just, if you love icons, that's fine. If you don't, peace, brother. But yeah, nope. So we're going to fight about icons, and believe you me, that will create problems all over the empire. All because of the anti-icon policy of the Byzantine government. You don't come in and mess with my icons, buddy. Or I'll beat you up or something. I mean, it's like, it seems almost ridiculous, but there you are. But disputes over religion continue. And they never really end, but they seem to be worse in the East. I don't know whether it's the larger population or the people of the East have more education or what. They may know about these things. Maybe if you walk through downtown London and say, what do you think about the Monophysites, man? I mean, would there be a fist fight? And I don't mean they didn't have pubs back then, but I'm just saying. I wonder. But I'm just thinking in the West, people were not quite, I think, as theologically involved about Christ's two natures or that kind of thing. Those are fighting words. So don't you bring up there's one nature. I'm a Monophysite, so I don't hang out with your kind. But there you are. Religious disputes go on. And even though the empire, that is to say the Byzantine Empire, although they never called themselves that, they always called themselves the Roman Empire. Even though you want a job in the Byzantine government, you better have Greek 101 and Greek 102, I might add, and maybe advanced Greek, because you got to read some Aristotle. And that is not easy. And I don't think you can get any of those cliff notes. That's not going to help you. So don't even dream. And you can't get it on Wikipedia nowadays. I think you're going to sweat it out. But anyway, seriously, this is like oh God, this is horrible. This sounds about Disney, the incredibly shrinking empire. Because you see it there, and it really is reduced during most of those later centuries to Turkey and that surrounding area. What will become Turkey in that area. And that's why Greeks and Turks have had so much difficulty over all the time. But as far as the West is concerned, how did they feel? Well, the West and the East didn't like each other. Yes, you're Christian, but not the right kind. So we accept you, but we don't like you. And you're acting so highfalutin. You think you're better than us. Oh, yeah, those people in the East had attitude. And they were kind of ugly to their Western compatriots. And when the East, as we will see, calls upon the West for help, the West, they're going to be saying, like the big boy in Rome, you're saying, like, You've been mighty ugly to us before. How bad do you want it? You want to say sorry? We really love you. So there will be some problems. And of course, the problems will make it very important in terms of the Crusades, as we are going to see. So the relationship I call hostile and contentious. And speaking of being Byzantine, I'm reminded of a Western representative from a German emperor in the 10th century going to Constantinople and being held up by Byzantine officials. You know, it's sort of like when you're going through your paperwork, your visa and all of that, your official diplomacy, and they're saying, so you have those papers, well, have you had your shots, or you know, all of that, and say, do you realize who I am? I'm from the Emperor Otto. And they go, who? You know, it's like, that hurts. That hurts a lot, because my emperor is a big man in the West. Well, he's not here, and your papers are not complete. So you may have to wait in the heart of Constantinople before you can be let in. It's like that. It gets very Byzantine in terms of papers, and you know, they just don't like each other. Now, here comes the new folks, the Muslims. That introduces, of course, a very new area. Should we be together? I mean, I don't like you, but still, maybe I like you more than I like them. Because Persians, gosh, where are the Persians? Gee, I believe they became Islamic. So they're no longer a problem. So the problem is, are we going to help you or let you fancy folks in the East get what you've got bloody well coming? So that will be the big deal, and we'll see that in terms of Crusades and all the rest. And we will go and talk about the Muslims and their influence in medieval developments next time. Thank you all very much. Nike, all right.
Hey, you don't like my icons. I don't like your Saint photos.